Imagine you're handed a movie script. The plot is this. A group of rebellious colonies seen as a mere appendage to a vast empire decides to start from scratch. They have few resources, many enemies, and an entire continent to discover. 250 years later, that same nation is not only the wealthiest and most militarily powerful on the planet, but its culture, its currency, and its decisions shape the lives of billions of people every day. Sounds like a fantasy, right? Well, that's the real story of the United States. But how did it happen? What was the secret formula? In the 18th century, power belonged to empires like the British, the Spanish, or the French. What made a rookie on the world stage surpass them all? Was it luck? Geography? A different mindset? What role did the world wars really play in its ascent? And how did a life-or-death rivalry with the Soviet Union end up cementing its global dominance? Today, the influence of the United States is undeniable. The dollar is the world's reserve currency. Hollywood is the biggest dream factory, and its tech giants define how we communicate. Understanding its rise isn't just a history lesson, it's understanding the world we live in right now. So buckle up. We're going on a 250-year journey to decipher the keys that led a rebellious colony to become the greatest superpower in history. It all begins here, in the 18th century. 13 British colonies on the east coast of North America. They were prosperous, yes, but they were under London's control. Tired of taxation without representation, of the famous tyranny, they did the unthinkable. They declared war on the most powerful empire on the planet. The Revolutionary War wasn't just a military victory. It was a revolution of ideas, and they embodied those ideas in a document that would change everything: the Constitution. Think of it this way. The Constitution was the software on which the country would run. And it came with some very novel features for the time: a separation of powers to prevent a new king, strong protection of private property that incentivized people to work, invest and risk, and a radical emphasis on individual liberty. This was a system designed for growth, and grow is exactly what they did. Just a few years later, in 1803, President Thomas Jefferson made the real estate deal of the century. Napoleon needed money for his wars in Europe, so he sold the United States a gigantic territory, Louisiana, for an absolute bargain. Overnight, the country doubled in size. Suddenly, they had an entire continent at their disposal, filled with unimaginable natural resources. They had the software, and now they had the hardware. The foundation was laid. The 19th century was one of relentless expansion. A powerful and controversial idea was born: manifest destiny. The belief that they were destined by Providence to expand from coast to coast. This idea fueled the conquest of the West, an epic story of pioneers, cowboys, and railroads, but also a tragic story for the Native American nations that were displaced. But as they expanded, a deep rift divided the country in two. The North, industrial and based on free labor, against the South, agrarian and dependent on slavery. The Civil War was the country's darkest moment, a bloodbath that nearly destroyed it. But the outcome was decisive. The North's victory not only abolished slavery, but also consolidated the industrial model as the nation's future. From here on, the United States would be a unified industrial power. And to feed these new factories, they needed people. A lot of people. Millions of Irish, Italians, Germans, Poles crossed the Atlantic in search of a new life. This massive wave of immigration provided an inexhaustible and young labor force, filling the cities and building the infrastructure of an economic giant. By 1900, the United States was no longer just an experiment. It was an industrial colossus that surpassed European powers in steel, coal, and oil production. The giant had awakened. At the beginning of the 20th century, the United States was an economic giant, but it was still playing in the minor leagues of world politics. They preferred isolationism, minding their own business, but 2 wars in Europe would change everything forever. In World War I, they entered late. Europe had been bleeding in the trenches for years. The arrival of American troops, and above all its immense industrial capacity, was the factor that tipped the scales. But their real leap to global stardom came 2 decades later. The attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 threw the United States headfirst into World War II. And this is where its industrial might was unleashed in a way never seen before. While factories in Europe and Asia were bombed to rubble, American factories, protected by 2 oceans, became the arsenal of democracy. They produced a bomber every hour, a ship every day. Its economy wasn't just spared. The war catapulted it to stratospheric levels. Unemployment disappeared and production doubled. When the war ended in 1945, the world was a bleak landscape. London, Berlin, Tokyo, Moscow were in ruins. Millions were dead. Economies were shattered. And the United States? Its territory was untouched. Its economy was larger than all other countries combined, and it had a weapon that no one else possessed: the atomic bomb. They were no longer just another power. They were the power, but a new rival appeared on the horizon: the Soviet Union. The world split into two blocks: capitalism versus communism. The Cold War began, a 45-year struggle for global supremacy, and here the United States played its cards masterfully. Instead of retreating, they decided to build the new world order in their own image. They pushed for the creation of the United Nations in New York. They created the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank in Washington to govern the global economy. They launched the Marshall Plan, a massive aid program that rebuilt Western Europe, and in the process, created giant markets for American products. And they forged NATO, the most powerful military alliance in history. But its dominance wasn't just military or economic. It was also cultural. Hollywood flooded the world with its movies, selling the American dream. Rock and roll became the soundtrack of global youth. Brands like Coca-Cola or McDonald's became universal symbols. This is called soft power, the ability to influence without using force. While the USSR competed on the military front, the United States was winning the battle of aspirations. The space race, which culminated with a man on the moon, was the ultimate demonstration of its technological and ideological power. Finally, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. The great rival was gone. The United States was left alone at the top, as the planet's one and only sheriff. The end of the Cold War ushered in an era of globalization led by the United States. And just when its industrial power seemed to be waning, they reinvented their dominance with a new revolution, the technological one. Silicon Valley became the epicenter of global innovation, and companies like Apple, Google, Amazon, and Facebook created a new sphere of digital influence that reaches every corner of the planet. But history never stops. Today, in the 21st century, its position is being challenged like never before. The meteoric rise of China as an economic and technological superpower has created a new rivalry. Deep internal political divisions are testing the strength of its own democracy, and the challenges of a digitized, multipolar world are becoming ever more complex. So, how did the United States become the world's greatest power? It wasn't just one thing. It was the unique combination of a geography rich in resources, protected by two oceans. It was a political and economic system based on liberty and competition that attracted millions of ambitious minds. It was its ability to turn crises like the World Wars into opportunities for growth. And it was its undeniable cultural power, which made the world not only fear its might but also desire its lifestyle. The script of the United States is still being written, and its future is uncertain. But understanding its past is the best tool we have to comprehend the forces that move our present. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. And now I ask you, what other factor do you think was key in the rise of the United States? Let me know in the comments. See you in the next video.